we all know the story about God taking Israel out of Egypt, and they went through the Red Sea and the desert for 40 years in the wilderness. And during those years, he fed them with bread that fell from the sky and water that came from a rock. And he was with them in a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. He was present with them, and he was actively involved as he was providing and he was protecting them. And then he brought them into Canaan, the land that he promised them, the territory that he already prepared for them. And as I said in my previous video, he gave them 3 instructions, not 100 instructions, not 100 things that they need to follow, just 3. So, first of all, you should not enter into covenant to the people of that land. Don't worship their gods, and you should tear down the altars. And that's it. That's the 3 things that God gave. And from the God who parted the sea for you, from the God who fed you in the desert, from the God who drove out your enemies before you, and he handed you land and he did not build, and he handed you vineyards he did not plant. He only asked 3 things, and that was too much for them. They could not do it. They went in and they looked around at all the Canaanites, and they looked at their culture. They said, yeah, wow. They looked at their gods and they were like, oh, And they looked at the way they lived, And instead of tearing down the altars, they started building on them. Instead of remaining distinct, they started to blend in, Instead of guarding who they let into the most intimate spaces of their lives, they opened the door. They let the wrong people all the way in. And they started worshiping their gods. And they started, what started in worship, it led to the altars, and the altars became permanent structures in their life. And what started as curiosity became devotion. What started as proximity became identity. And this is how it always works. This is how it still works today even, You don't wake up one day and decide to worship the wrong thing. It happens slowly in different stages. The people that you let closest to you, the values you absorb from the culture you're in, the structures you slowly build around the things that have taken God's place in your life. And God is always watching, because he's a covenantal God. He watched his people do this over and over again. In Judges, you can read it. And every single time, he did not abandon the covenant. He allowed consequences. Yes, there was consequences. So whenever they would do this, he would withdraw his covering from them so they can feel the weight of a life that's lived outside his protection. So something would happen to them. Something would always happen to them. And he would allow it to happen because he withdrew his covering, And when God withdraws his covering, it's not because he stops loving you. It's because he's serious about what he said. So, God is covenantal. He's not safe in the way we want God to be safe. He's not the God who lets everything slide because he's a nice person. He's a God who says, listen here, I made you a promise and I kept it. Now I need you to understand that this relationship has weight. It has terms. It has shape. And when you are going to violate the terms of it, there will be consequences. You will not be covered. Not because I'm abandoning you or because I'm not who I say I am. It's because the covering will be removed. And this is the part that breaks me every time, He would raise up a deliverer. Every single time they repented, he sent someone to bring them back. And he would find a Gideon that's hiding in the winepress. He would take the weakest, the most overlooked, the most disqualified person in the room and use them to shift the entire situation. And that is who God is, because He is faithful to the covenant even when we are not. So let me ask you something directly. What covenants have you made that God was not part of? Who have you let into your innermost life that's pulling your heart in the wrong direction? What are you going to give your energy to, your first loyalty to, your first hour of your day to, your first 10 minutes at work to, your first thought in the morning to? If it's not God, then what is it? What altars are standing in your life right now that were never supposed to be built? Because a covenantal God sees them. He's not confused about what's happening. He's not fooled by the Sunday attendance and all the posts on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. God can see exactly the altar that you build. And God knows who you have been worshiping. He knows who you have been letting in. And to this day, He's still faithful to the covenant. So the question is whether you are. The question is whether you are, whether we are. I think let's get back to it. Let's stay on the path. God is real. He's not some invisible idea in the mind. He's real, and he watches us all the time.